Have you heard of any franchise success stories where franchisees became wealthy from owning it? I keep hearing stories of franchisors taking advantage of franchisees. We're building a house for a guy whose family owns a bunch of Dunkin' Donuts and 7-Elevens. We're putting a Shark Tank in his basement. So yeah, I think they're doing okay. The real question is, how did these guys buy the franchise? A lot of them are half to $1 million to start. Even more. I have been in franchising for many years. I know over 200 franchisees that have made more than ever would have at a regular job. Most are millionaires multiple times over. Check out for more info. Also, Entrepreneur magazine publishes their top 500 franchises with all the pros and cons. If you buy a franchise, you are way more likely to succeed than starting your own business. Just my thoughts. Domino's back in the day. Some guy started delivering for them and ended up owning like 10-15. Came to my school when I was a kid and gave us all pizza if we told 2 people to eat Domino's. Really good friend of mine owns a dozen Buffalo Wild Wings and keeps opening new ones. He was clearing 7 figures a year after the second one opened. His Phil owned over 100 Waffle Houses and 40 Burger Kings. He cleared well over $10 mil a year. I represented a man who owned 4 McDonald's franchise locations. He made a large sum of money every year. Los Pollos Hermanos does pretty well. Yes. I had one neighbor who owned a dozen 7-Eleven stores and lived in a $4 million house. Another had KFC and Taco Bell stores in the region. Plenty of McMillionaires out there. I know someone who owns a couple UPS stores and recently bought a $1.5 million house. He owned the franchise for about 10-12 years before buying the second store. Worked for a high-end car dealership. Guy owned all the Popeyes in town. Bought a Porsche Panamera Turbo with a personal check. He bought a $2 million house. Tore it down. And built a $4 million house. I'd deliver his wife's car back to his house whenever it needed service because they couldn't be bothered. The wife drove a GLS 63 and had a LWB Range Rover with 2 car seats so she didn't have to drive them in her Mercedes. They had a McLaren too. Nicest people. For fun, I looked at his property tax bill on the assessor was $108,000. I see a lot of talk about restaurants. But service industry franchises are huge. I know multiple owners of pest control, residential restoration, lawn care, power washing, and so on who are incredibly successful in their endeavors. Friend's dad started working at a Burger King, then bought one. Now he owns 300 of them. I think he's doing okay. My dad and uncle both franchised Dunkin' starting back in the late 70s. Long story short, my uncle ended up a multi-millionaire, basically took 80 of the money and currently owns a $3 million house with about $20 million in assets. Definitely did well for themselves. The best franchises like McDonald's already require people with wealth and cash liquidity to get one. Know a guy that owns 4 Culvers now and is loaded. So basically only big names, it seems like. Otherwise small franchises might not be worth it as their business model isn't as proven as the bigger names and their reputation as franchisors isn't quite known. Tim Hortons. A license to print money here in Canada. I used to own 3 Baskin-Robbins franchises. Any franchise is only as good as the corporate office. Sadly, BR Corporate is out of touch with their franchisees. I would not recommend. I worked for Rick Flory. You could say he was successful. At the time he was the 3rd largest Domino's pizza franchisee in the world. Tom Monahan definitely treated Rick right. Rick started as a part-time driver during college at Domino's One, working directly with Monahan. I am a successful franchisee with an SDE around $250,000–300,000. Does that make me rich, IDK? Yes. If you own 5-6 McDonald's, you're doing pretty damn well. Same with most franchisees. If you are the owner, but hiring somebody else to be the operator, you can scale. It also requires you have the capital to back it. Growing up, my neighbor owned several Burger Kings, Arby's, and a few others. He was rich successful before he retired but walked away with over $10 million when he sold. Gas stations. McDonald's franchisees are doing great here. Seems to me like most of the folks who own multiple franchises were already wealthy. They're just used as investment tools to protect that wealth. I could be wrong though. If someone actually got wealthy by taking out a loan and buying a franchise, I'd love to hear it. I mostly do accounting for businesses in the auto industry, so what I've seen is definitely biased towards that. Oil change, tires, and windshield franchises are all extremely lucrative for my clients. Single locations can clear $300K to the owners. One client started buying the Jiffy Lube sort of thing, and after 10 locations he felt comfortable enough to start his own brand, and he's at something like 25 locations last I spoke with him. Yes, I work for a franchise owner and he doing pretty well for himself. I was friends with a girl in high school whose dad owned a few McDonald's restaurants and they lived in a mansion. I bought a second-hand Lexus from a guy who lives on an 8-figure property in my town. I asked him what business he was in. Turns out over the past 20 years, he has started and run 6 Subway franchises. Get rich eventually scheme. We have owned a franchise for the last 17 years. It now profits $500,000 per year after expenses. I don't draw that high of a salary as I like to keep the money in the business. But technically I could do a members draw if I needed to access it for personal reasons. I know someone who owns 100 franchises of a very big coffee company, won't say which, you know who they are. They are super wealthy. The kicker is they were purchasing franchises and building locations before anyone ever thought they would become a major international company. My neighbor owns like 50 McDonald's. He has a very nice home. I know a lady that has over 500 Taco Bells and she has her own hangar and fleet of jets. Yes, me. Franchise just makes turnkeys easier. Training, products, etc. Guesswork is done for you. Having the franchise name typically helps business sales consistency, especially in harder times. Though paying royalties sucks and a lot of franchisors don't deliver the things they claim they will. You basically are paying for the branding. The lady who owns a couple of Dunkin' Donuts locations near me does quite well. She often works the drive-through too. I know a fellow who owns a few Wingstops, started with one. It has been extremely successful for him. If going to open a franchise, only deal with big names that are super well known. And please by all means stay away from home service franchises. Total scams. I heard a friend's brother-in-law is a millionaire because he owns 7 franchises like Lifetime Gym. When the first Raising Cane's came to Utah, the person earned all his money on the first opening day. I personally know the different franchisees related to 3 different franchises that are multi-millionaires. Never have to worry about money again, rich. As a result, McDonald's, Papa Murphy's and Wendy's. McDonald's guy has owned several for, well, I've known him for 35 years and he's owned 4 locations that whole time. Annually donates millions to charity without a thought.